And so let me ask you then, just so that I get all of that information, because I know what it is that you did.
Mm-hmm.
But what I didn't, what I haven't really gleaned yet is why you did that, what you were trying to achieve, and whether or not it actually achieved that, or whether the experience turned out to be something completely different to what you actually were expecting.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I talk about this in my speech all the time because people want to know why I did it. But initially, the reason behind it was, for me, someone who grew up my entire life in shape, who never knew any differently, was trying to tell people, my clients, that it was so easy. All you have to do is, X, Y, and Z. You eat healthy, you exercise, and boom, you see the results. Why is it so hard for you just to do it? Because for me, it's easy. And so that was my perspective. And there was a disconnect between my clients and I, and they would tell me, Drew, you don't understand. Because for you, you've never been overweight. And so you don't understand how hard it is. And so I kind of took that to heart. And that's kind of where the idea came from. I was thinking of ideas, and like a lightning bolt, this idea popped up in my head to, okay, what if I gain weight on purpose, document the whole thing, in hopes to gain a better understanding of what it's like to be overweight for the first time in my life. That was the main reason as to why. And yes, it was a truly humbling experience. My eyes were open, and I realized how wrong I was as a trainer of when it came to trying to help my clients transform. And so I'm glad I went through that process, because I came out of it a better trainer, a better man, more empathetic, more respect, and a better understanding for those that go through the process. And at the end of the day, people tell me it made me more relatable to them as a fitness trainer, someone in the health and fitness industry, because I had kind of, quote unquote, been in their shoes. And it helps me to be able to relate to them on the mental and emotional side of transformation. Because sometimes in the fitness industry, we get so wrapped up on the physical, macros and calories and workouts and fitness plans and all these things that most of us know how to do, but it's just the application of it that's really, really hard for people. And so that's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah. So I hadn't completely read your book. I've kind of skimmed through it and read pieces of it. But it seems to me like you were surprised by the emotional toll that it actually had on you.
Yeah, that was the biggest surprise, and that was the hardest part for me, because part of your identity is based on what your body looks like, and once your body isn't that anymore, you kind of lose your identity. So I freaked out for a while, wanting to tell strangers that I wasn't really overweight. This isn't me. This is just an experiment. Go to my website. Here's my before picture.
Right.
I didn't know how to handle it. And then I came to realize how much of transformation is mental and emotional. And that's what I was missing before, is that connection on the mental and emotional side. I could give someone the best meal plans, the best workouts, help them count their macros, the best, food for them. But none of that matters if that person doesn't know how to overcome their own mental and emotional challenges. And so that's where the lessons were learned. And that's where I was able to connect with people on that end. And so at the end of the day, it just makes me more relatable to someone that's going through that struggle, because I can understand somewhat, not a complete understanding, but somewhat an understanding, a better understanding of what it's like to go through that process and realize that the battles are won on the mental and emotional side.
Yeah. And so you ended up getting a lot of notoriety, I suppose. You ended up on TV with Dr. Oz and all sorts of things. How did that affect your training and your whole business, I suppose?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I had no intention of any of that happening, and that's what made it interesting. Was I didn't have a marketing strategy to get on Dr. Oz show. I didn't have media connections to get on all these shows or to write a book. It was organic. It happened naturally. And, so in a way I feel very blessed and fortunate for it to happen the way it did. But yeah, the media ate it up because it was something that was just crazy enough to get people's attention, but also people that were watching, it was also motivating and inspirational to them once they understood why I was doing it. They saw the struggle that I went through. And so it did affect my business, because then, I got a book deal, wrote a book. I was working in the medical field full time during this process, but I had to quit that job when I took on the book project, and never looked back. I really couldn't take on training clients one-on-one anymore, just because I had so much other stuff going on online and public speaking and traveling.
Right.
So, so that's kind of how it changed my business. And here we are 5-6 years down the road, and it's been a huge blessing. So very grateful.
So our events are obviously, we try not to focus specifically on the ketogenic diet, with the idea that we don't want to exclude anybody else who maybe just wants to try to maybe look at restricting carbohydrates to a certain extent, and any restriction, especially just eliminating sugar, but restricting carbohydrates to any sort of extent is going to have great benefits for people. And so we don't want people to feel marginalized and say, okay, if they're not keto, then they don't belong in our, in our community.
Yeah.
But we do focus a lot on the keto side of things as well. And I saw a couple of YouTube things and that where you talk about the ketogenic diet as well. So how involved are you with that sort of concept and that side of things?
Yeah, so I'm a huge proponent of the ketogenic diet. I went on the Dr. Oz show a couple of years ago in place of Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, who actually referred me to go in his place because he was going to be on his honeymoon.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and so I was able to go on the Dr. Oz show. So I'm a huge proponent of it, but at the same time, I'm not an extremist to where I think it's the only way for every single person out there. I like to teach people, hey, if you haven't tried it, it's worth giving it a try. And if you're going to try it, you got to give it a consistent 30 to 60 days minimum effort before you can write it off and say whether or not it was optimal for you. And then from there, whether you continue to live the ketogenic diet as a lifestyle after that, there's some things you need to tweak moving forward as far as finding what carbohydrate level and what protein level is optimal for you based on your goals. And
right.
So maybe it's a higher carbohydrate or protein intake than what it was originally, the 70-25-5 macro ratio. So I like to tell people that, find what's optimal for you. And whether that's ketogenic or not, then that's fine. Like, no one can tell you what's optimal.
Right, absolutely.
Optimal.
I think that's one of the big things that I've learned over these last couple of years is that every single person is so different. And, even if you're stick and you hardcore keto, everybody's different within that realm as well.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's not always necessarily the best thing for everybody anyway, and it depends on, your metabolic situation and how sick you are or not. People with diabetes and that kind of thing respond extremely well to this, but other people don't necessarily, especially the guys that are insulin sensitive and the athlete types and that. Not only do they not necessarily need it, but they don't ever see the need for it.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm a bit concerned about with those kinds of people is that I still feel like carbohydrates contribute a lot to the inflammatory situation in your body, and that leads in one instance to the cardiovascular risks. I mean, there's instances of lean, athletes and runners dropping dead of a heart attack and stuff, and no one would have ever known looking at them, but they still had that inflammation in their arteries, which resulted in the buildup of plaque, and then the plaque ruptures and they end up with a heart attack. So I always like people to look at the very least at restricting it to some extent, and if nothing else, just eliminating sugar, because that's like the biggest thing.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, for the majority of people. And I think my goal is to get people to become their own self-experimentation, rather than just saying, oh, I'm just going to follow this protocol and that's what they told me was healthier. But that's why you got to do blood work and become your own self-experimentation to find out what's optimal for you. So get your blood work done on a regular basis. I tell people, if you're getting your oil changed in your car more often than you're getting your blood work tested, then you probably have a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a good analogy for some people, but even athletes that might look good on the outside, like a physique, six pack, it doesn't mean that you're optimal on the inside. And vice versa, right? Someone that's overweight, that's living a healthy lifestyle might be optimal, as far as their blood work goes, that might not have a six pack or 10%
Right.
body fat,
So they don't look like a lean, mean fighting machine, but they are healthy, and you know, the longevity
Yeah.
part of it is a good thing for them.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
you know, when if I, you know, with this thing, with low carb USA, my demographic, you know, I'm not going to talk too much about the science. You have plenty of people there to talk about the science.
No.
Mine is just making it more relatable to your average person. My demographic is, you know, your mom or dad that's maybe between 30 and 40 years old that, you know, has kind of let life get in the way and they're looking to get their health back on track. And that's what I think I can bring to this type of event rather than just your other doctors. And
Yeah, no, there's no way that you know, that was the whole, and I think Eric Westman was a guy that actually suggested to me, like, that I reach out to you and see if you could make it to this event.
Yeah.
You know, and I think he saw it. I actually haven't discussed it with him.
Okay.
But I would imagine that he's all about the science and the clinical side of things.
Yeah.
And I think he sees exactly that, as that, and that's, I think, why some of his talks go down so well, is that he talks from a point of view of major experience. He's been doing this in his clinic for so long, and a lot of the idealists and the purists kind of struggle, because when it gets down to doing it for real, it's not as easy as you know, the purists would have you think.
Yeah.
It's not as straightforward as a purist would have you think. And I think that was where he sees the value that you would bring, is that, you know, this is like a real life implementation of this stuff, and your experience of working with all these different kinds of people. I think that's what people at this event want to hear, is like, hey, I'm not alone in this. I'm not the only person that's struggling, and I'm not the only one that's different. You know, that everybody's different. So I think that's going to be great.